Hello everyone, it's Linda from Linda Z's in Arlington Heights, Illinois. And if you remember, you saw our video last week. I had the whole table covered with bags that our wonderful educator Suellen made. They were just stunning. I hope if you haven't seen it, go back and look at her technique. They're just phenomenal. She is now going to give you a free class for the whole session. And hopefully you'll love it so much you'll join the Buy Any Club afterwards. So take it away. Let's give her a real warm welcome. I'm so glad to have her here. Thanks so much, Suellen.
Welcome to the Annie Bags class. Today we're talking about market to market. And it's a 2-for-1. And so you get not only the bag, but there's also this little handy dandy clutch. And it has kind of nice pockets and places to put all sorts of things. So this pattern does contain 2 totally separate complete patterns. It's a great little bag. And I've made a couple of modifications on this. And so we'll walk you through. And so you can either follow exactly what it says in the pattern, or you can look at some of these other options and see if there's things that you would like. So we're first going to go to the ironing board. It's a great little ironing board. It's called the Laura Star Iron. And the reason I like it is because it has a fan inside, and with the fan inside it can pull the steam through. Now, one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to make the handles. And so you're going to take your very long piece of fabric, and this is one of the modifications I've made. I have not cut it in parts. And so I put this stick through it because that keeps me from pressing a crease in the sides. And so by using a stick down the middle of some kind, I can press the seam open like this, and yet I won't have a crease inside. While I'm over here, then I'm going to also make the zipper pulls. So this tool helps you do the fold where it folds on the inside. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull, and all you do is you pull it through and it just makes the fold for you. And you can have a piece of adhesive tape that will allow you then to glue it right down on a quilt or something else. But I use this all the time to make my single fold bias tape for garments and for everything else. Then you're just going to fold it in half, and I'm going to steam it because that keeps it really in place. And that's all there is to it in getting the zipper pulls all pressed and the bag handle pressed. Now let me show you another really nifty, quick tool. And we'll get set up here. And we'll take a break for just a second. Okay, to make things go quickly, I absolutely love this. It's a turning tool. And to use the turning tool, you use this instead of putting a safety pin and having it go down, but this just goes so much more quickly. So I have not separated out the handle here. And what you do is you hold on to the stick that has the fabric as well as the tube, and you just pull it on down. But for me, this goes so much faster. And on some of these bags that have the very long handles, it makes a huge difference, especially if you're making multiples of one of the bags. Then it makes an even bigger difference. So there is this. And then I'm going to just pull it on down. Where the seam is, it was a little tight there, but now it's just fine. Isn't that great? It goes so quickly. And then the other end, it just comes out. You just kind of give it a little wiggle, and it comes out, and it's all turned, and it's that fast. Now in the pattern, it has you cut this into 2 different pieces, but I like the strength that it gives. And so rather than having the handle end right here at the edge of the pocket and have it have the ends folded in there. I have it continue all the way to the bottom of the bag going around, and that way I can put the feet right through the handles, and I have the handles attached all the way. It gives it just a little more strength. So that is one of the changes I made. So now that I have this turned, then we're just going to press it, and I'll show you another very handy little tool. So now, because I have not pressed I don't have creases in the sides, now it's very quick to just press it flat. And you want to press it flat because then it keeps it, as we're putting the strapping through, it keeps it from getting all twisted around. But this is a long strap because we're going to loop it around and then loop it around again, and so it's one continuous piece on the entire bag, and that makes just a very strong handle. So I really do prefer having the strongest handles possible on a bag. Now, this pattern by Annie is one of her earlier patterns, and so as you're looking through the pattern, it does not have the page where you can cut out the little squares to identify each of the different pieces for the bag. So you would need to make that on your own, and to help keep that straight. And I think because it is one of her earlier patterns, that's one of the reasons I've made a few little adjustments on this, just added some options for you. So here we go. So we have that all done. And now we have the other nifty thing. This is called a bodkin. And it reminds me of alligator teeth on this bodkin. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this to the end of the strapping. And this works really well if you're going around like a waistband or the top of a skirt or something that has seams and you want to get around a corner, or if you're doing like a crib sheet and you want to go around the corners. But it works so quickly and well. So then I'm just going to kind of bend the edges in, and then we just pull. And it's so much faster than a safety pin. These are not expensive tools, and I just really value the ability to get things done a little bit more quickly and with a little less stress than if we were having to do it more the slow way. So you can see how quickly this goes. Now, on the pattern, you would have cut the strapping in half, and well, actually, it's a little bit. You end up with extra, and that's why I could then have it go all the way under the bag, because she does have you make some extra, and so instead of trimming away the extra and having two straps that stop at the end of the pockets, then I did have mine go all the way around. So we almost have the end coming out. And this is a very long strap. Now on this end then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just be able to peek here. I'm going to take this off, and then I'm going to attach my forceps. That keeps the end there, and then I can adjust it, and if I need it to go either way, the forceps will help me get it adjusted. And I keep that pressed crease right at the sides, and it's almost there. And I don't worry, I like having extra at the end. And so as you can see, I have about that much extra at the end. If you fold in the side that has the seam first, it goes more easily. And so we're going to fold it in here. And there we have this end in. And it does help to have that fold in the side with the seam first, right there. And then this is okay now, so I'm going to take the forceps off. If I needed to slide it back the other way, the forceps would have helped me pull it back the other way. So now I'm going to go to the side with the seam first. And in the pattern, this strap is made up of two almost width of fabric. They're 42 inches pieces of fabric, and then a smaller one in the middle. And so it's an 18-inch piece in the middle. So it is a very long strap with the 42 and the 42, so that's 84, and then another 18. So it's a very long strap, and it does give you plenty of space. So here, then what we would do is we would use the edge stitch foot and sew around the entire strap. And we would use the edge stitch foot here also to sew around the strap. So those are what we would be sewing around those. Since we have two bags, and I've demonstrated using the edge stitch foot to sew around the edges before, I'm gonna go forward to some other kinds of things. Now in this bag, what has been the next part is to make the base. And so to make the base, it's pretty easy. I took some foam core board, or you can take another stiff kind of board and cut it to size. You turn the edges under twice, 1/4 inch, and sew around the edge. Then you're going to sew the center seam. You're going to center the seam here and sew across the bottom. Very straightforward. After you do that, you're going to invert it, turn it inside out, use the little pokey turning tool. And I'm going to snip off the threads. Give it a quick press. And then we insert the base. So that's all there is to doing the base of the purse. So we have the base of the purse, we have the strap, and we have the zipper pull. So those are all pretty straightforward. They're pretty straightforward to do. The next thing that she's going to have you do is to mark the bag. So when you are marking the bag, and this is an important part, you're going to be marking where the bottom is, and you're also going to be marking where the straps are going to go. And so this is the piece where we've marked the center of the bottom, and we've marked, let me get this out of the way, we've marked where the straps go. And the straps are going to go to the inside of the line. So you get this all marked, and then after you have it marked, then you're going to add the pocket. So let's look at adding the pocket. To add the pocket, we bind the top edge. And let me get this out of the way. And let me get some thread. And we'll use black thread. And because this is a cross wound, that means you can see the diagonals going back and forth. I'm going to put it here. If it was a straight wind, I would put it here so it would come off the side. Because if it's a side wind, then you want it to come straight off the side and it would go into here. But because it's cross wound, we want it to come off the end of the thread. So we're going to put it down here. I'm going to go back over here. And I have my trusty magnifier. I'm going to hold this in place. And then we'll thread it. This is a 720 Bernina, and it's different than all the other 700s because it does have the narrow stitch plate. And I prefer it for doing quilting and things of that nature. So that's what's going on. We do have the 1/4 inch foot in, and we're going to go down and up with the foot, bring the thread up, and then we're going to go down here. And I do keep some tension on the binding. That's why you never pin or clip the binding in place as you're doing it, because it is going to end up just a little bit longer. And that's normal, and that's to be expected when we're doing this. So I do keep it taut. I like to have a nice tight binding. I want it to be crisp when it's finished. So then we come up. And then I'm going to finger press this. You could take this to the iron. You could press it with using an iron. But I find that if I just finger press up and use my fingernails or a turning tool or whatever, and then I'm going to clip it. And as I use the clips, I look on this side to make sure that it covers that stitching line, because I'm going to be sewing again right down that same stitching line. So here we go. And as I sew, I'm going to keep helping the fabric stay over by just kind of running my fingers on that. So I'm going to line this up right with stitching in the ditch. That means stitching right where the crease of the fabric is. And I just keep You can use your stitch in the ditch foot here. But if you don't have a stitch in the ditch foot or an edge stitch foot, you can use your 1/4 inch foot. So this is all we have to do for binding the top of this pocket. So now what we'll do is we will take the pocket, and rather than, this is how it's going to end up. This is how the pockets will end up. They'll end up looking just like this. But to sew them up, I don't want this raw edge to show. And so to sew that on, I'm going to put it going the other way. So this is going back across the bottom of the bag. And I want that to stay in place, so I'm going to clip it in place. And now I'm going to sew along the bottom at a 1/4 inch. And sometimes you have to lift the back so it doesn't get caught. So if you have a long piece of fabric you're working with, sometimes just lifting the back of it so that it's not catching on the edge of the table helps it to go better. And I'm making sure as I go along that it's still staying right on that white line. Then after you finish sewing it on, I want it to be, the needle to be down when I stop. So when you finish sewing it on, then you're going to flip it up. And it's starting to look like the bag now. And I'm going to clip these pieces in place right here. And I'll clip this one in place right here. And now it's important when you're sewing these bags to sew around the edges. And you can see that in this case, I have stabilized it by using a quilting pattern. With this pattern, if you're going to follow the instructions explicitly, then you're only going to quilt the front of the bag to the soft and stable. You will not quilt the back because the back is a separate, the inside is a separate piece. Now, because I was using the long arm and because I like the inside of my bag to be tacked in place better, I preferred to do it a little differently. But just so that you're aware, as you're making this bag, if you're following the instructions, the inside of the bag is not quilted with the back. So on my version, the inside is quilted, and so that allows me to do a few different things. But when I am working on the bags, it's really important to have the edges all closed together, because look what happens. If I'm sewing and it's not tucked down, this can flip back and be, it can go the wrong way. And it makes it easier to have a good product if you have the edges sewn down. So the next thing I need to do is, after I have sewn the pocket on, I'm going to sew 1/4 inch from the edge along this seam, and that closes in that raw edge at the bottom of the pocket. So we'll close in the bottom edge of that pocket, and then we're just going to go up and around the rest of that end of the bag, because what that will do is then that will, oops, I need to close the bobbin door. That will close in the edge of the fabric. Okay, and now I'm going to go up and around, and I just line up with the inside of this foot, because I will be sewing 1/4 inch along the edge, and I don't want this seam line to show. And so if I don't want the seam line to show on the outside of the bag, then I need to keep it less than 1/4 inch as I'm sewing around the edge. And the closer I am to the edge, the better. In fact, when Annie was visiting and we were doing a class together, where she was the teacher, she had us do kind of a zigzag stitch to close up the edge of the fabric, and so that it would stay in place as you were doing other applications along the edge. So we just go up. So you're just going to go all the way around. And you can see now, as I do the other parts of the bag, this is going to stay in place, and it won't be trying to cause me trouble. but this is how you then keep the edge of the fabric down. And I want to make sure that this pocket is up exactly where it should be. This bag goes together very quickly. It's a very nice little bag. So then we would put the other pocket on, and when the other pocket was then on, we would be ready to do other things. Now, let me show you what I've done instead of having a loose fabric. What I've done is I've been able to do things like here, add a mesh pocket on the inside. Now, I couldn't have done that with the loose bag because it would just be so floppy. But because I was able to have the inside quilted, then I was able to add a pocket. Another thing that I would suggest that's pretty easy is I would suggest adding a clip, and so that as you have keys or something else of that nature, you can have a place to attach your keys. It's very, very easy. You just make your strip, put a buckle in, and attach it up at the top. So you can always make these your own. You can always do different kinds of applications on them. So after you have done those two, then what we're going to be doing is we will take the fabric. Here we go. I'm looking for the straps. Here we go. And we're going to line up the straps, and we're going to line up with the seam side down, line up at that center line. We're going to go, and then we're going to find the center, and we'll put it over on the other side because we want the handles to be the same length. So here's the center. So I'm going to put this over here right on the center line. And then I will be putting this on this. And when I'm talking about the center line, I'm talking about the line that goes right down the middle of the bottom. And then I will bring this around here and line it up and sew it on this way. So that this then supports the bag all the way around the bottom. And there's no way this can break. And when we put the feet right through the ends of the straps as well, that makes a very, very secure kind of bag. So let me show you how we do that. Okay. So on this bag, what I've done is I'm up to this point, and I have sewn the bag here, the strap on, and I've sewn the strap on here, but I've waited to sew this. So I have used a pin down at the bottom, and then I've used clips up here. And you do make your marks. Annie will tell you the exact measurements that you're going to measure. We're going to sew up and then make a crisscross here and then back down, and that will secure the strap. So we'll finish getting this strap on. You don't want to sew over a pin. Sometimes it is tempting. And I'm sewing right exactly on top that previous line of stitching on the strap, so that I only will have one line of stitching on here. And we'll come up here And then we're going to go across. And I'm just going to follow the mark across until I get to the line of stitching. Then we'll go down. I like having the magnifying glass. Old eyes, you know. We're going to go back across. So now we have our square. And now we're going to go, whoops. We're going to go back to the corner. Now we'll go back around the top. To get right exactly to the corner to make a crisp point. And then we'll go back over to the other point. Now we have our X. And we go back down to the bottom. And I'm going to go across to the other strap, and then I'm going to back up. And now I'm going to go across the end. And that will secure this. And there we go. So at this point then, what we're going to do is we're going to look at putting the feet on. In the pattern, it talks about sewing buttons, and buttons are great, but I kind of prefer the look of the feet. And so I have gotten the feet, and they're very easy to install. And if you use the loose lining, you can't get to them to take them off if you're laundering, because these bags wash beautifully. But if you are using the fixed lining, you can take a screwdriver and remove the feet and then put the feet right back on after you have finished laundering your bag. So to put the feet on, I have the feet right here. Now I will say that when I do this at home, our dog exits the area very quickly. She does not like being around noises like this. But I can take out the feet. And we use 6 feet. You can see I have marked, and so that the feet are marked exactly where to put them. I'm going to put this protective piece. You can use a piece of an old cutting board. You could use lots of different things. And then I have this little tool. It has a small hole in the opening. And this I just got out of my Brother toolkit. And so it came with a Brother machine that I have. And I'm just going to put it right here. Make sure it's over the protective thing. And then I take the hammer, and it makes a little hole. And when I have the hole, then I'm going to take the little screw and put it through the hole right up to the... And you can use another kind of sharp object. You can use different things, but I find having some kind of little hole really helps. And you can purchase those tools very easily. I think Linda carries a couple different options, but if you have a Brother machine, you may well have one of those little tools in there. And then I'm going to take a screwdriver, I'm going to hold the foot on the other side and tighten it up. And that's all there is to putting feet on this bag. So it's very quick. I find that actually quicker than if I was going to sew on a button, but buttons are another option. So another of the things that I would do if I was to make this bag is I would then add this pocket here. And to add the pocket, I would want to, let's see, we have these to bind and that to bind the ends. I have bound the edge of the mesh using the fold over elastic. Super, super easy to use. And we've shown that in a number of the different videos, but it just folds over you. It's just a one pass seam. And then you can, again, bind the edge of the mesh and then sew the mesh onto the bag. And then I just follow the seams from the pockets up. The other thing that you're going to do when you have the pockets on and you have the feet on, you're going to make the seam to make this a boxed bottom. It's a great way to make a bag. It's fast. It gives you nice crisp corners, and it's pretty easy. So I have marked where I'm supposed to cut, and so I'm just going to cut here. And then what we do is we're going to be sewing this edge up, and this is where things become different. Let me show you what we do if we're following the directions. If we're following the directions, we have the lining. And the lining is all just one piece. And we're going to sew down the seam like this. And she has you use a 1/2 inch seam for these. So it is a wider seam, and you need to follow these instructions because the top of the bag, the top edge, where you're going to be enclosing it with a zipper, that is measured to have a 1/2 inch seam on each side. So if you use a 1/4 inch seam, you're going to need to increase the size. It makes it a little more secure. So on here, we're going to make a 1/2 inch seam, and I have the pins back out of the way so that I won't go over them. And then after you have the 1/2 inch seam here, we're going to press it open. And we'll make the box bottom down here. So we'll press this open. It makes a nice flat seam. It's easy to have inside the bag. And then with that cutout at the bottom, it makes a really nice box seam that then will fit right inside your bag. It's loose though. And so for me, that's why I wanted to do something a little bit different. So to do this one then, the way this is different is, first of all, I want to make sure the handles don't get in the way. So I'm going to stuff the handles inside the pockets. And then I'm going to sew this together. And again, we have to use a 1/2 inch seam because that is what it is meant for. And I'm going to start with a backup, a reverse. But because this is a 1/2 inch seam and I'm going to bind it, then I'm going to need to trim it as well. But if you want the measurements to work on this, you have to follow the seam size guidelines, because it's a mathematical kind of thing. And so then as we fold this in, you can see this will work just great. So then I'm going to trim this down. Lots of fabric here. So I'm going through 4 layers of fabric and 2 layers of soft and stable sewing. No, actually it's 8 layers of fabric where the pockets are, and 4 layers of soft and stable. So it's quite a bit. And then after I have it trimmed down, I'm going to bind the edges. And just go slowly because there are lots of layers here. I do keep a little tension. I don't want any bubbles in it. And then we're going to wrap this around like this. And I'm just going to do the bottom part here so that I can show you the next part. So we'll put this down here. I'm just going to get this secured down at the bottom. We won't do the whole seam. And I'm going to trim these threads away, because then what we do is we do the same thing that happened on the other bag. We just make this a box pleat at the bottom. And so we have then the short little pieces to bind the bottom. So I'm going to fold the ends in. And this is the same technique you use on the clam up bag. And so with the clam up bag where you have that inside folded piece that you fold over the ends, it's the same technique. We just use them in different combinations. So we're going to then sew this across and then fold it over, and you end up with a box corner on the inside but you still have the inside fabric that is quilted to the outside fabric. So that is just a different way of doing the inside of this bag. The tricky part on this bag is doing the zipper at the top. So let me clear away some of this stuff. And to do the zipper on this, you know, there are different kinds of zipper applications in this, that Annie does. And this one is I love this zipper. In fact, I've used this in different ways in some bags that I make. And so you end up with a circle. You end up with this circle that you're going to attach. But let's look at how we get there. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to sew you're going to have a piece that you have attached a 1-inch wide strip of interfacing that you iron onto the piece. Then you're going to sew the ends and turn it right side out. When you have it turned right side out, you have an open edge and you have a closed edge. The closed edge is what you're going to put next to the zipper. And when you're doing the zipper, then I want my my stay tape. Okay, there it is. It was hiding. I love this Stitch Perfection tape. I use this all the time if I'm making garments, if I am doing zippers, lots of different applications. It comes in 1/2 inch and it comes in 1/4 inch. The reason I like this is because it is wash away. And so when you launder your garment or your bag, it's going to be gone. But it helps so much in keeping things in place. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this, and it's sticky on 2 sides. I'm going to put it right down the edge of the zipper. That way it's not going to show when we sew it. And it's easier to remove the paper if rather than cutting it, you kind of pull it. Because when you pull it, it has some stray little fuzzies that come past. And so having those stray little fuzzies lets you hold on to those while you remove the paper. It does make a difference. So we're going to want to put that zipper tape on. Now after I have that on, I'm going to want this end to be even with the other one. And the same distance from the edge. So I'm looking at how this lines up with the teeth. And I just press it in place. And then I can clip this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew that inside edge. And the first thing I want to do is sew coming in. And now we'll sew down along the edge. And this 1/4 inch foot works perfectly because it just fits right next to the zipper teeth. And when I get down here, then I don't want the zipper to be able to go off the end of the bag. And so to keep it from going off the end of the bag, I'm splitting the teeth. And this is just a great, I think it's an attractive way to have a zipper end. And you can either hide the teeth under the fabric or have the teeth exposed. I'm having the teeth exposed. And we're just going to turn it. So there we have the zipper installed. The one end is secure. Now I want to secure the other end so that I don't lose the zipper off the other end of the zipper tape. So this piece, let me show you. This piece is that square. And you take the piece and you fold the 2 sides in, and then you fold the other 2 sides in, and you have a smaller square with all the edges are folded. And then we're going to fold it over the end of the zipper tape. And I want to make sure the edges are all lined up. The first thing I'm going to do is go across the top because that secures it in place. But then I will go around the entire zipper tab. And I will go probably across the top of the zipper. I'll go across that twice just to give it extra security. It's much easier to do this now than after it is attached to the purse or the bag. You could use this for your shopping bag. Okay, so now we have both ends of the zipper secure. And then the next part is to take 2 strips, and this is the part that becomes the part that goes around the top of the bag. So I'm going to take, again, I want to make sure that I line up these ends because I want the middle of the seam, I want that seam at the end to line up with the edge of the bag, the side of the bag. So I'm going to be careful in getting it lined up. So this is the fabric for the top of that piece. And I also want to make sure that this zipper tab stays out of the way. After I have it attached clipped on the top, I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to clip the bottom because we're doing the bottom and the top. So it's kind of like a fabric sandwich. And then we'll sew our 1/4-inch seam. Get these edges lined up. And as you go, you may want to just make sure that all the different edges of the fabric are all still together. And here we go. And when you have this part done, I'm going to finger press it open. Do not top stitch this. Do not top stitch this, this line. The reason you don't want to top stitch it is because the next thing you have to do is join the 2 ends. So I'm going to finger press it. And now I'm going to have this side go to the right and this side go to the left. And I'm going to nest these seams. And this will make that circle piece. And then you want to make sure that you nest the other end, having this piece go the same way it went on the first time. So I'm lining this up. You'll notice that this did stretch just a little bit as we were going along. I had to be really careful with the fabric on this. And so I was using even the tiny 1-inch strips around the edges from when I had quilted it to do some of these pieces. And so some of it was had been handled a lot of times before we are bringing it to the sewing machine. I'll put it that way. So it can be a little stretchy. So now we have our circle. If you want to top stitch along the edges now, you could do that. So we can open this up. And now if you want to top stitch along this line, you're welcome to. But you have to get to this point before you would even think about the possibility of top stitching. It's not in the pattern to top stitch. It's not necessary, but you're welcome to. And then after you have pressed this all together, you're going to stay stitch around the bottom edge to make sure that it all stays together. So that will go with that. This is now when we then are ready to apply the top. The first thing you want to do is, if you are adding a keychain kind of thing, you're going to attach the keychain. You're just going to sew it right to the top of the bag. No big deal. And I put it at the end where we zip it closed because that's the easiest place to access it. And then we are putting this circle zipper that we just did right around the outside edge of the bag. As I said, it goes together really fast. This is a fun bag to do. And I'm going to take the tray off because it's a little easier to not have to worry about the tray, and a little bit easier to get into this circle. And we're sewing a 1/4 inch, but I'm going to do it just kind of a scant 1/4 inch because when I bind it, I don't want this line of stitching to show. So a scant just means a thread or two shy of a 1/4 inch. So I'm just keeping it a little bit inside. So you can see in this bag, I did use the alternate way so that the inside is also quilted, and I did add in an additional pocket. You could put any kind of pocket that you wanted on the inside of the bag, and you could even put a zippered pocket if you wanted to on the inside of the bag. So as you're making these Annie bags, it's fun to make them your own and to do different things to have it so that they are the way you would use it. And just keep bringing it on around. I'm going to sew all the way around. And that's the beauty of having the measurements done for you so that as you put them together, they all fit. Let's swing it on again. We're almost all the way around. And now I'm going to leave it this way. The only thing we have left to do is to bind the top edge. So to bind the top edge, we're going to fold this in half. And because this is a straight edge, you could press it, but as a general rule, Annie recommends not pressing the bindings as you put them on. So I'm going to turn it on the outside because I want to make sure that the side that is the most visible is the most accurate. And so as you're doing these, I would suggest that. So this one then, it's also a good time to double check and make sure it's the way you want it. So this is how the bag will be, and that works. That's just the way it should be. And we have the key fob that we can pull out right here. Here's the key fob. So I think we're ready. We're going to tuck this in, and again, make sure the straps are out of the way. And I want to make sure I'm going to join this in a flat area. So I'm going to line this up here. And I'm going to sew it with a good 1/4 inch. And I'm going to keep pressure on this binding as we go around. I do not pin it in place ahead of time. And that's because, you know, Annie said that one time when she did it, someone had thought they were helping her out and they had the binding all pinned in place. And by the time she got around, it was about, 1/2 inch or so longer than it started. And that's because you do keep pressure on the binding as you go around. And I want to make sure that this zipper is flat on the inside, so I just take time doing that. Keep the edges all lined up. We'll swing it around. Strap out of the way. Keep the other clip out of the way. At this point in the bag, it does help to have a free arm. A free arm means the fabric can go down under the throat of this machine. If you don't, you can just have it go around the edges and you'll be fine. Keep it all flat. Going over that really big bump at the end, so we'll go slow. I use a Microtex 90 needle, and that seems to work pretty well. 9014. And the Microtex, the reason I use Microtex is that it's a very sharp needle, and when I have to go through so many layers in the soft and stable, then I want to have a very sharp needle. So that's what I have in the machine. So I'm going to leave this here. And in the pattern, it says to join the edges in your favorite way. In some of the later Annie patterns, she has you start at an angle and all of those things. I happen to really like doing it the way I do it on my quilts. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to be right here. And this is the width of the fabric. And I'm going to have this lined up along the edge and fairly firmly tight. I'm going to have this coming the other way. I'm going to line this up with the bottom one and see how wide it is. And then I'm going to snip this off and just a little scant, a little bit short. That way it'll keep the tension on. Okay, now I have my two ends. Now I'm going to put them together to make sure that I put them together the correct way. Now we sew across the waist, not up between the legs. So then when I put it down, I just double check it every time. So now you can see I have the two sides going down. Those are the legs. And so I'm going to sew across the waist. this, pin it just a little differently so it'll stay in place while I start it. Okay. And I want this corner to be right here as well. Okay. So that looks like it'll fit perfectly. We'll snip this off. And then we'll finish, we'll finger press these open. That makes it a little, the bulk is spread out this way, and so that it doesn't have as big a lump. If I sewed just straight across and didn't, especially, even if I folded it out, it would not distribute the bulk. This distributes the bulk very well. And so now we'll finish up sewing. And then we'll bind that top edge. So this is just like binding a quilt. So if you're a quilter, I'm sure that you have your own favorite way of binding your quilts, but this is just like binding a quilt. Or if you're a garment sewer, this is like putting on a bias tape casing around an armhole or something. So you use the same kinds of techniques if you're doing garment sewing or if you're doing quilting. Okay, so now we have this attached. We're going to have this come up and over. And I do, for this part, I really do use lots of clips. Get it all clipped in place. And then I would do a stitch in the ditch around the outside edge. You can see there's some thread trimming to do. But I would clip this all the way around like this. And then I would sew right in the ditch. And then it's finished. So that is your bag. You would insert your base. And that helps keep those corners all nice and firm. You have your legs, you have your strap. And it's a great bag. I think it's a really nice bag, and it's pretty fast to put together. So this is one I would recommend for someone who has not done lots of Annie bags. Now the other part of this pattern is a smaller piece that you could keep inside. And that is this. You know, if you're going to a conference or something, it has a clear pocket, it has a zipper pocket, and it also has another pocket with a place for a pen or a pencil, or actually two. So you could put pens and pencils there and have a pad of paper or whatever you wanted there. So it's a nice little bag. It has 2 loops and 2 sliders on it. And so let's look at what different skills you would use. I'm going to put this back on the machine. And let's look at the different, if there are a few different techniques you would need to put this together. Most of them we've covered, but let me just cover a couple extras. So the second pattern that is in this, in the bag is called the Name Tag and Essentials bag. And it's a great little bag. There are a few things that you do differently in this one. Number one, you're going to be working with Velcro. So what I would suggest is I used a glue stick and I glued the Velcro in place. And then you're going to want to sew right along the very edge of the Velcro. And so that you're not having to, especially on the hook part, you're going to want to sew. You're going to want to sew right on the very, very edge where you do not run into any of the hooks. Now, when you get to the end, you'll notice, now this is the fuzzy side of the Velcro, but on the hook side, they're in rows. And so I just sew between one of the rows down the, on the Velcro, and so that I don't get my fabric or needle or anything caught up with any of the hooks. But you're going to sew around the Velcro. And if you want to be extra safe, I would at least go a little bit over. Again, you can go around 2 complete times, and that works fine. Another thing that you're going to be working with on this bag that you didn't work with on the other is vinyl. And with the vinyl, what you're going to want to do is keep the paper on the back, or you could put one of the slidey kinds of Teflon surfaces that you can get to go on the bed of your machine, or something else, because especially where you have this little plastic and just different parts of it, it can stick. And so I keep the paper underneath it, and that helps me not stick on the vinyl. So I'm going to bind this, and you'll see it's, as long as you don't have that vinyl sticking to the bed of your machine, you're going to be fine, and you can go just fine. Sometimes if there's a chance I might have some vinyl up at the top, I'll use the Teflon foot, and that works great. You know, if I turn this over and so the fabric was on the bottom and the vinyl was on the top, then I would probably put the Teflon foot on. But if I keep this, and then the nice thing about vinyl is I can bring this around and have it match up just exactly. And so that you're going to have it perfect on either side, because I can see right through, and I can line this up so that it's exactly the same on the front and on the back. And then after we get it all lined up on the front and the back, then we're going to stitch right on the edge of the binding. Oops, I must have. You do have to be careful not to press down, because like that right there, I pressed down just a little bit and then it stuck. So just be very careful as you're sewing along that you don't press down at all on the. See, I can't press. I have to make sure I stay just on the fabric. I don't want to press down where there's any vinyl that might be touching the bed of the machine, because that's when it will stick. I just keep double checking that it's all lined up, because that way when you finish, you can choose which side you like better and use the best, put your best side forward. So that's the vinyl. You're going to be binding this edge. Now, when I was putting the bag together, part of the challenge was, okay, which way do things go? So this is the other way that Annie does zippers. And so this is a different application. We're going to be lining up the front of the zipper with the front of the fabric. The edge of the zipper is just going to poke out just a little bit. And I'm going to sew right down the edge. You have to have the zipper poke out just a little bit, because then we're going to turn it back over. And when we turn it back, all those raw edges will be contained right within the seam, and you won't have any raw edges in this. So now I'm going to turn it down right here. And I'm going to sew right along the edge. And by sewing right along the edge, then I'm enclosing all of those raw edges. And it'll be a nice line of top stitching on the front. So in this pattern, you have two different ways of applying a zipper. So we have the two different ways of applying the zipper. After that, you're going to bind the top edge of this zipper. And the reason you're going to bind it is because then you're going to be sewing that edge down. So to bind the edge, I'm going to line this up again right with the edge of the fabric. And we'll sew right down here. And then we'll wrap this around that top edge, give it just a little more strength. And then we're going to sew right down the ditch. I just keep wrapping it down. And this was for me the thing I had to think about the most. We're going to put a zipper on this. This is a zipper by the yard. I love zipper by the yard. So we're going to open it just a little bit and put one zipper tab in on this side, one zipper tab on this side. Get the ends lined up, and then we just put that on right that way. So now, when I was doing this, for me, then trying to figure out, okay, how does this go on? It goes on upside down so that when you fold it, it will be right side up. So in the picture, it just took me a while to figure out what that picture was saying. You're going to put it upside down on the main part of the bag, and you're going to sew right along here and then up and around. So that was, for me, the challenge. And then we're going to put this together with the vinyl pocket, and then the bigger pocket, and this will be a big slip pocket here. We have the zipper on this side, and then the other slip pocket right there. So you have lots of different pockets in this, and we're going to then sew them all together, just sew around the edges here. We're going to put this on first so that we can sew our pen and pencil strips. But there's one change that I wanted to show you that I made on this. To make the big strap, I used the bigger, remember for the bag to make the zipper pulls, I had a little one of these. This one is the bigger one, and I can use this to make the strap. So I use this, and then I fold this in half, sew it on all sides, and I have the strap made. And the way this is made, following the instructions, you have to have the strap on. It's not detachable. So what I would do is, to make it a little different, I would put, here, this is a slider. It's called a slider because it helps you slide the handle, the strap, to make it different sizes. So I'm just putting it on one end, and I'm going to secure it here. I'm going to move it over, insert it again, go backwards. Now, rather than put a ring on, because I could just put a ring on, this is what the instructions would be, is to put it through the ring on the bag and then have it go up and over. But what I think would be nicer is to put a hook on it instead, and then we can attach it using a hook. So the only difference is, rather than having this strap go directly attached to the bag, is I am putting a hook on it instead, and that way I can attach this to the bag or not. So those are the only other new kinds of skills in making this. To finish it, we would just simply sew around the outsides, and then we would bind it the same way we bound the other bag. You would make the four corners on the bag, but it's a nice, fun kind of quick little bag that you can have to add and to match your other to market bag. Have fun, enjoy. It's a pretty nice beginning kind of bag. You can have the loose inside, or you can modify it to your heart's content. Have fun. We'll see you in another month.